Darnell, 37 years old, a man whose hands were calloused from a decade of gripping the controls of a forklift, stood in the living room of the two-bedroom apartment he could barely afford on his $48,000 a year salary. The air, usually thick with the scent of Zuri's cinnamon toast and the faint, sweet smell of his wife Tasha's $80 perfume, was now sharp and metallic with something new. It was the smell of severance. "Pack your things," Tasha said. Her voice, usually a warm alto that wrapped around him after a long shift, was now as flat and cold as the glass top of their $450 coffee table. She was standing by the window, her silhouette framed by the setting Jacksonville sun, a vision of victory in a new, shimmering gold dress that must have cost at least $500. She hadn't even looked at him when she said it. He blinked, certain he had misheard. "Pack my—" "What are you talking about, Tasha?" She finally turned, and the smile on her face was a stranger's. It didn't reach her eyes, which were scanning him with a look of clinical assessment, as if he were a piece of worn-out furniture she was deciding whether to sell or simply leave on the curb. "Your things, Darnell. Your work clothes, your boots, that sad little collection of tools. Whatever it is you think is yours." She gestured vaguely towards the bedroom. "I need the space." His heart, a steady engine that had powered him through 12-hour shifts at the West Side warehouse, sputtered. "The space? We just won. We're rich. What are you talking about?" The words hung in the air, ridiculous and naive. 2 days ago, they had been screaming, jumping up and down in this very room, holding a tiny slip of paper worth $4.2 million, a quick-pick ticket he had bought on a whim at the gas station on Roosevelt Boulevard, using a crumpled $20 bill from his own wallet. He'd let Tasha hold it for safekeeping. He had no idea how critical a mistake that was. Tasha's sister Mireille emerged from the kitchen holding a glass of champagne, a $60 bottle of Veuve Clicquot. Darnell knew they couldn't afford just last week. Mireille's smile was a carbon copy of her sister's, all teeth, no warmth. "She's talking about the future, Darnell. Her future." "Our future," Darnell corrected, his voice quiet. Mireille let out a short, sharp laugh, a sound like ice cubes clinking in her expensive glass. "Oh, honey, that's adorable. But let's be realistic." She took a delicate sip. "Warehouse boys don't touch jackpot money." The phrase hit him like a physical blow. Warehouse boys. It was her favorite little jab, the one she used whenever she wanted to remind him of his place, of the grease under his fingernails that never quite washed away, of the steel-toed boots he left by the door. He looked at his wife, searching for some sign of the woman he'd married, the woman who used to praise the strength in his hands. He found nothing. Tasha just nodded in agreement with her sister, her expression unyielding. "The ticket was in my purse," Tasha said, her voice dropping into a tone of false patience, as if explaining something to a child. "I claimed it. My name is on the paperwork. You were just along for the ride, a witness to my good fortune." He felt the floor tilt beneath his worn-out $65 sneakers. The entire foundation of his life, his marriage, his family, the future he'd spent the last 48 hours dreaming about, was crumbling into dust. He thought of his daughter Zuri, who was at a sleepover at her cousin's, blissfully unaware that her family was being torn apart by a piece of paper he had paid for. The injustice of it was a hot, choking thing in his throat. He had been a good husband, a devoted father. He worked overtime without complaint. He fixed the leaky faucet, patched the drywall, built Zuri's bookshelf with his own 2 hands. And for what? To be dismissed like a temporary employee whose contract had expired. "So that's it?" he asked, the words barely a whisper. 12 years, our daughter. It all just ends because of a lottery ticket?" Tasha sighed. a theatrical display of exasperation. Don't be so dramatic, Darnell. It was ending long before this. The money just clarified things. She picked an invisible piece of lint off her gold dress. You have an hour. Mireille and I are going out to celebrate. We're looking at a new condo in Riverside, something with a view. I expect you to be gone when we get back. She walked past him, the scent of her perfume, a final, suffocating insult. He stood there, frozen, listening to the sound of their laughter as the front door clicked shut, the deadbolt sliding into place with a sound of absolute finality. He was 37 years old, he made $48,000 a year, and his wife had just stolen their future and told him to pack his things. Have you ever felt so completely blindsided by someone you trusted? Tell us about a time your gut told you something was wrong, even when everything looked perfect on the surface. We read every single comment. Now back to the story. Darnell stood alone in the sudden silence of the apartment, the weight of his reality pressing down on him. He was a good man, standing in the ruins of a life he thought he had built. But what Tasha and Mireille didn't know was that good men, when pushed too far, have a quiet strength that is often underestimated. And Darnell had paid for that ticket. He remembered every detail. Their life before the ticket had been a carefully managed ledger of debits and credits. Their $1,350 a month apartment on the west side of Jacksonville was neat, if a little cramped. Darnell's 2012 Toyota Camry, with 187,000 miles on the odometer, was paid off, a small victory he cherished. Tasha drove a 2019 Honda Civic, a reliable car with a $280 monthly payment that sometimes felt like a stretch. Their budget was a tightrope walk. Darnell's $48,000 salary covered the essentials, while Tasha's part-time job as a receptionist at a dental office, bringing in about $19,000 a year, paid for Zuri's dance classes, the occasional dinner out at a place like Chili's, and Tasha's growing collection of brand-name purses, most of them bought on sale at the St. John's Town Center. Darnell's world revolved around two things: the hum of his forklift and the sound of his daughter's laughter. He found a simple, grounding satisfaction in his work. He was good at it. He could maneuver a 4,000-pound pallet of paper goods through a narrow aisle with the precision of a surgeon. His supervisor, a man named Henderson, valued him. "Darnell, you're the spine of this warehouse," he'd say, clapping him on the back. The praise was worth more to Darnell than the modest paycheck. His true wealth, however, was Zuri. She was 8 years old, a brilliant, bubbling fountain of joy with her mother's smile and his steady, observant eyes. Her dark brown skin was luminous, and her hair, which Darnell had learned to braid into neat sections, was adorned with colorful plastic beads that clicked and clacked when she ran. Every evening, after he'd scrubbed the warehouse dust from his hands, he would sit with her at their small, $150 IKEA dining table and help her with her homework. He loved the way she would chew on her pencil, her brow furrowed in concentration, and the explosive joy on her face when she finally solved a difficult math problem. He packed her lunch every morning: a turkey and cheese sandwich with the crust cut off, a bag of baby carrots, a juice box, and a note written on a napkin. "Have a great day, my superstar. Love, Daddy." Tasha loved Zuri too, but her love was expressed differently. It was in the perfectly coordinated outfits she bought for her, the expensive-looking bows for her hair, the photos she posted on social media captioned, "My Princess." She managed their family's image, while Darnell managed its heart. The cracks in their marriage were subtle, hairline fractures they both pretended not to see. Tasha had grown restless. She dreamed of a life she saw on reality television, a life of gleaming kitchens, European vacations, and effortless luxury. She'd started making comments that stung Darnell more than he ever let on. "Is this all there is? she'd ask, gesturing around their small living room. Or she'd see a commercial for a $70,000 Lexus and sigh, "Must be nice." Her sister, Mireille, who was divorced from a man with a mid-level corporate job and lived in a constant state of aspiring glamour, fed Tasha's discontent. Mireille saw Darnell's steady, blue-collar life, not as a foundation, but as an anchor holding her sister back. The night they bought the ticket was unremarkable. It was a Tuesday around 7:15 p.m. Darnell had just finished a 10-hour shift. He was tired, his muscles aching, but Zuri needed poster board for a school project due the next day. He stopped at the CVS on Roosevelt. On his way out, he saw the Powerball sign blinking in the window of the gas station next door. The jackpot was high. On a whim, he walked in. The air smelled of stale coffee and gasoline. He went to the counter, pulled a worn leather wallet, a gift from Tasha 5 Christmases ago, it probably cost $40, from his back pocket, and took out a $20 bill. He asked the cashier for a $2.50 quick pick. He remembered the cashier, a young man with a tired expression, sliding the ticket across the counter. Darnell took it, and as he always did out of habit, he pressed his right thumb firmly onto the blank space on the back before folding it and putting it in his shirt pocket. When he got home, Tasha was on the couch, scrolling through her phone. "You get the poster board?" she asked without looking up. "Yeah, it's in the car," he said, pulling the lottery ticket from his pocket. "Got us a ticket too, feeling lucky." She glanced at it, a flicker of interest in her eyes. "Give it here. I'll put it in my purse for safekeeping. You'll just lose it in the laundry." He handed it to her. It was a simple, trusting gesture, the kind a husband makes a million times. He watched her tuck the small piece of paper into a zippered compartment of her $350 Michael Kors handbag. He didn't think about it again. He went and helped Zuri glue pictures of planets onto her poster board, the smell of Elmer's glue filling their small kitchen, a far more real and present scent than the distant dream of a lottery win. They had no idea that simple exchange, the passing of a folded piece of paper, was the beginning of the end. The day after the drawing, Tasha was the one who checked the numbers. Darnell was at work, loading a truck bound for Orlando. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was Tasha. He ignored it. Company policy. It buzzed again and again. On the 5th call, a prickle of unease ran down his spine. He excused himself and answered. "We won," Tasha whispered, her voice tight with disbelief and euphoria. "Darnell, we won." He didn't believe her. He made her read the numbers to him 3 times. He checked them against the results on his phone. They matched. All of them. The world tilted. $4.2 million after taxes. It wasn't a mega jackpot, but it was enough to change everything. He left work early for the first time in his life, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The first 48 hours were a blur of joyous disbelief. They held each other, they cried, they danced with Zuri in the living room, telling her they could finally buy a house with a big backyard for her to play in. Zuri, with the unfiltered honesty of a child, asked, "Does this mean Daddy doesn't have to go to the warehouse anymore?" Darnell had smiled. "Maybe not, sweetie, maybe not." But the shift began subtly. The word "we" started to disappear from Tasha's vocabulary. It started when they told her family. They gathered at her mother's house, a modest home in the North Side. Tasha held up the ticket, her hands trembling. "I won the lottery," she announced. "Not we." Darnell noticed, but dismissed it as the shock of the moment. Mireille was instantly by her side, her eyes gleaming. "Oh my God, Tasha, you did it! You finally got your break!" She hugged her sister fiercely, shooting a look over her shoulder at Darnell. It was a look of dismissal, of triumph. He was already becoming a footnote in their story. Over the next few days, the betrayal escalated from subtle omissions to outright cruelty. Darnell overheard a phone call Tasha was having with their cousin in Atlanta. "No, Darnell didn't put in any money," Tasha said, her voice smooth and convincing. "He was just with me at the gas station. It was my money, my ticket, a complete fluke." The lie was so bald-faced, so effortless, it stole Darnell's breath. He stood in the hallway, his hand frozen on the doorframe, listening to his wife erase him from their shared miracle. When she hung up, he confronted her. "Tasha, why would you say that? You know I bought that ticket." She waved a dismissive hand, already scrolling through a real estate app on her new iPhone 14, a $1,200 phone she'd bought that afternoon. "Oh, Darnell, don't be so literal. It's just easier this way. It's cleaner. It gets complicated when you involve too many people. This is for the family." "I am the family," he said, his voice rising. Mireille, who seemed to have moved in, stepped between them. "Lower your voice. You're going to upset Zuri." She placed a proprietary hand on Tasha's shoulder. "What my sister is trying to say is that this is a chance for her to build something. You have your job. You're stable. This is her moment." The ultimate insult came a week later. Tasha and Mireille had been going on endless shopping sprees. The apartment was filled with bags from Nordstrom and Saks Fifth Avenue. Darnell came home from work, his hands stained with grease, to find them in the living room with a real estate agent, looking at brochures for multi-million-dollar homes in Ponte Vedra Beach. He felt like a ghost in his own home. The agent, a woman in a crisp $1,500 suit, barely acknowledged him. Tasha made the introductions. "This is Darnell," she said, her tone the one you'd use for a distant relative or a handyman. Later that evening, after the agent left, he tried to talk to Tasha again. He pleaded with her to remember who they were, what they had built together. "This isn't you, Tasha. The money is changing you." She was sitting at the dining table filing her newly manicured nails, a $75 indulgence. She didn't look at him. Mireille was on the sofa, pointedly reading a copy of Vogue. "You're wrong," Tasha said, her voice cold. "The money isn't changing me. It's allowing me to be who I've always been. I was just trapped before. Trapped in this tiny apartment, with this tiny life." He recoiled as if struck. "Was I part of that trap, Tasha?" She finally looked up, her eyes hard. "You work in a warehouse, Darnell. You come home smelling of sweat and cardboard. My sister was right." She stood up, walking towards him, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that was more chilling than a shout. "Warehouse boys don't touch jackpot money. It's just not how the world works." That was the moment he knew his marriage was over. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about respect. It was about his worth as a man, a husband, and a father. She hadn't just stolen a lottery ticket. She had tried to steal his dignity, and that was a debt he would see paid. The love he had felt for her curdled into a cold, hard resolve. He would not let her erase him. He would not let her take what was rightfully his, and more importantly, what was rightfully Zuri's. He had no idea what was coming, but he knew he had to fight. For 2 weeks, Darnell lived in a fog of disbelief and quiet anguish. He moved into a cheap, extended-stay hotel off I-95, a depressing place that cost $350 a week and smelled of stale cigarette smoke and desperation. He told Zuri that he was doing a special project at work that required him to stay close by. The lie tasted like ash in his mouth, but he would do anything to shield her from the ugliness. He saw her on weekends, taking her to the park or the library, trying to pour a lifetime of love and reassurance into a few short hours. One Saturday afternoon, sitting on a bench at Memorial Park, Zuri handed him her piggy bank. It was a bright pink ceramic pig, heavy with coins. It probably held 35, maybe $40. "Daddy, this is for your new apartment," she said, her small, serious face full of concern. Her braids, freshly done by Tasha with expensive new beads, clicked together as she pushed the pig into his hands. "So you can get a nice one." Tears pricked the back of Darnell's eyes. He hugged her tightly, burying his face in her hair, inhaling the scent of her coconut shampoo. This was why he had to fight. This small, beautiful black girl, with her boundless heart, was his entire world. Her drawing of their family, 3 smiling stick figures labeled Mommy, Daddy, and Zuri, all colored with the same proud brown crayon, was taped to the dashboard of his Camry. He was not just fighting for money, he was fighting for the man in that drawing. The breakthrough came on a Monday morning. He was sorting through a small pile of mail that he'd picked up from the old apartment, a courtesy Tasha had grudgingly allowed. Bills, junk mail, a catalog. And then he saw it. A crisp, white envelope with a formal return address. The Florida Lottery Commission, Tallahassee, Florida. But it wasn't addressed to Tasha. It was addressed to him, Mr. Darnell Jenkins. His hands trembled slightly as he tore it open. The paper was thick, official. He unfolded the letter. His eyes scanned the formal language, his heart starting to beat a little faster. "Dear Mr. Jenkins," it began, "this letter is in reference to the winning Powerball ticket from the drawing held on October 12th, claim number PB87721FL. The primary claimant, Ms. Tasha Jenkins, has initiated the payout process for the lump sum of $4,210,500. As part of our standard verification protocol for claims of this size, we review all available information regarding the purchase and possession of the winning ticket. The claimant has listed you as being present at the time of purchase." Darnell's breath caught in his throat. He kept reading. "To ensure the legitimacy of the claim and protect all involved parties, we require you to complete and return the enclosed co-purchaser verification form, Form 582-B. Please verify whether you contributed to the purchase of the ticket and if you have any claim to the winnings. Please note that failure to return this form within 30 days will be considered a forfeiture of any potential claim." He sank onto the lumpy bed of his hotel room, the letter clutched in his hand. It was a lifeline, a bureaucratic, standard-issue lifeline. Tasha, in her arrogance, had made a critical mistake. To seem credible, she had to admit he was there, but in doing so, she had opened a door. The Lottery Commission, in its methodical, process-driven way, had given him a voice. He suddenly remembered everything about that moment at the gas station with perfect, crystalline clarity. The cashier's bored face, the specific $20 bill he'd used. It had a tiny tear near Andrew Jackson's eye. The security camera, a small black dome mounted on the ceiling right above the counter. And most importantly, the unconscious habit he'd developed over years of buying the occasional ticket, pressing his thumb onto the back. It was a silly, superstitious gesture, a way of marking it as his. But now, it could be everything. His thumbprint, the camera footage, the letter in his hand. For the first time in weeks, the suffocating weight on his chest lifted. The fog of despair began to burn away, replaced by a cold, clear certainty. He was no longer a victim. He was a man with evidence. The quiet, unassuming forklift operator from the West Side was about to become very, very methodical. Tasha and Murray thought they were celebrating their new life. They had no idea what was coming. The first phone call Darnell made was not to a lawyer. It was to his supervisor, Henderson. He requested 3 days of personal leave, something he hadn't done in years. The second call was to the public library, where he used their free computers to research the best family law and civil litigation attorneys in Jacksonville. He spent 6 hours reading reviews, checking bar association records, and making a short list. He wasn't looking for the flashiest lawyer with the biggest billboard on I-95. He was looking for a shark, a quiet, meticulous shark. He found her in a small, unassuming office in San Marco. Her name was Anya Sharma. Her website was simple, her biography direct. She specialized in complex asset division and fraud. Her consultation fee was $400, a painful amount for Darnell, but he knew it was an investment. He sat across from her in a leather chair that probably cost more than his entire wardrobe. Ms. Sharma was a sharp, elegant woman in her late 40s with a calm, penetrating gaze. She listened to his entire story without interruption, her fingers steepled under her chin. Darnell laid everything out: the years of his marriage, his salary, Tasha's growing discontent, the purchase of the ticket, the overheard phone calls, the warehouse boy's comment, and finally, the letter from the lottery commission. He handed it to her. She read the letter twice, her expression unreadable. Then she looked at him. "Mr. Jenkins," she said, her voice precise, "your wife has committed a breathtakingly stupid act of fraud. Arrogance is the Achilles heel of every amateur criminal." A wave of relief washed over Darnell. She believed him. "You mentioned 2 key pieces of potential evidence," she continued, her tone shifting into a strategic gear. "A security camera and a thumbprint. Let's start there." Over the next 3 days, they moved with quiet efficiency. Ms. Sharma's first action was to file a formal petition with the court to preserve evidence, specifically the video footage from the gas station on Roosevelt Boulevard. Her paralegal, a brisk young man named David, served the notice to the gas station's corporate owner that same afternoon. The cost for the filing and service was $280. Next, Ms. Sharma drafted a notarized affidavit for Darnell. In it, he swore under penalty of perjury to the exact circumstances of the ticket purchase. He detailed the time, 7:15 p.m., the cash he used, and the fact that he had pressed his thumb onto the back of the ticket. Getting it notarized at a local bank cost him $10. Then came the most critical part. Ms. Sharma drafted Darnell's official response to the lottery commission. It included a copy of his notarized affidavit and a formal declaration of his 50% claim to the winnings. It also included a formal request for a temporary hold on any payout pending an investigation, and specifically requested a forensic examination of the physical ticket for fingerprint evidence. The package was sent via certified mail costing $8.95 to the Lottery Commission's legal department in Tallahassee. "This," Ms. Sharma said, holding up a copy of the package before sealing it, "is a bomb. We just have to decide exactly when and where it goes off. Your wife mentioned a press conference?" Darnell nodded. "Tasha loves attention. She said they're giving her one of those giant checks. It's in 3 weeks, at the Hyatt Regency downtown." Ms. Sharma smiled, a thin, satisfied expression. "Perfect. Theatrics are always more effective when they're public." Her fee was $600 per hour, and Darnell knew the bill would be staggering. But for the first time, he felt like he was in control. He was no longer just a warehouse boy. He was a client. The next 3 weeks were the longest of Darnell's life. He had to live a lie, pretending to be a broken, defeated man, while a legal machine was quietly grinding into motion behind the scenes. He returned to his job at the warehouse, the familiar rumble of the forklift a comforting constant in a world turned upside down. His co-workers knew something was wrong. He was quieter, his usual easy smile gone. He told them he was going through some family trouble, a vague explanation they were kind enough to accept without prying. He continued his weekend visits with Zuri. They were a painful mix of joy and sorrow. He had to listen to her excited chatter about the new big house Mommy is buying and the fancy party they were going to have. He would just nod and smile, a hollow ache in his chest. How could he explain to his 8-year-old daughter that her mother was trying to steal their future? He couldn't. He just held her hand a little tighter, read her favorite stories with a little more feeling, and prayed she would be okay. The phone calls with Tasha were exercises in supreme self-control. She would call him, her voice dripping with condescending pity. "Darnell, are you doing okay? I can send you some money if you need it. Maybe $1,000 to help you get on your feet." "I'm fine, Tasha," he'd say, his voice level. "Good. Because things are just getting so amazing over here. Mireille and I put a down payment on a lease for a Mercedes G-Wagon. It's white. It costs $1,800 a month, can you believe it? And we're going to the press conference next week. You should watch it on the news. You can say you knew me when." Each word was a little twist of the knife. He knew she was trying to gloat, to rub his face in the dirt. He let her. He played the part of the forgotten man perfectly. "That's great, Tasha. I'm happy for you." What she didn't know was that after each call, he would email a summary of the conversation to Miss Sharma, documenting every boast, every lie. He was building a case not just in court, but in the court of character. One evening, Mireille called him. Her voice was syrupy sweet, which immediately put him on high alert. "Darnell, hi. Tasha and I were talking. We feel bad about how things went down. We want to be fair. We're prepared to offer you a one-time settlement. $50,000? Tax-free. All you have to do is sign a little piece of paper saying you have no claim to the ticket." $50,000. It was more money than he'd ever seen in one place. A year's salary. It was also less than 2% of his rightful share. It was an insult disguised as generosity. "Let me think about it," he said, his voice calm. "Don't think too long," Mireille warned, her tone hardening. "The offer is only good for 24 hours. After that, you get nothing. And trust me, our lawyers will bury you if you try to fight this." He hung up the phone, his heart steady. They were getting nervous. The letter from the Lottery Commission must have been forwarded to Tasha, and she was trying to buy his silence before the official process could begin. They still underestimated him. They saw him as a simple man who could be bought off with a year's wages. They had no idea he was playing for the entire jackpot. He emailed Ms. Sharma with the details of the offer. Her reply was swift and short. "Excellent. More evidence of their intent to defraud. Stay the course." He was staying the course. The press conference was in 2 days. The day of the strike arrived cloaked in the humid gray of a Jacksonville morning. Darnell didn't go to work. At 10 a.m., he was sitting in Ms. Sharma's conference room, wearing the best suit he owned. A simple black suit that cost $250 from Men's Warehouse, purchased 5 years ago for a cousin's wedding. Beside him, Ms. Sharma was a portrait of calm authority in a charcoal gray Armani suit that probably cost $3,000. On the large screen at the end of the room, a local news live stream was just beginning. The Chiron read, "Jacksonville mom claims $4.2 million Powerball prize." The camera panned across the ballroom at the Hyatt Regency on the riverside. It was exactly as Tasha had dreamed. A podium, a backdrop plastered with the Florida Lottery logo, and a crowd of reporters and photographers. Darnell saw Mireille in the front row, looking smug in a bright red dress. And then Tasha walked to the podium, beaming, wearing a custom-made white dress that looked like it cost a fortune. Her hair was styled in an elegant updo, and her deep brown skin was glowing under the television lights. She looked like a queen, taking her throne. "Good morning," Tasha began, her voice smooth and confident. "I am just so overwhelmed, so blessed. This is a dream come true, not just for me, but for my beautiful daughter Zuri." Darnell's jaw tightened. She was using their daughter as a prop in her grand deception. Ms. Sharma glanced at her watch. The process server is in position. He'll move on my signal. On the screen, a lottery official, a man named Howard Vance, director of communications, was stepping up to the podium. He was holding a giant ceremonial check made out to Tasha Jenkins for the amount of $4,210,500. The cameras flashed, a storm of light. "On behalf of the Florida Lottery," Mr. Vance said, his voice booming, "it is my great honor to present this check to—" "Now," Ms. Sharma said quietly into her phone. On the screen, Darnell saw it happen. A man in a plain business suit, who had been standing near the side of the stage, began to walk forward with purpose. He was not a reporter. He was not a lottery official. He moved with the unhurried confidence of someone who belonged exactly where he was. He walked right up the steps to the stage, bypassing the security guard who seemed too confused to stop him. He approached Mr. Vance and handed him a sealed legal envelope. The cameras, sensing a disruption, all swiveled to focus on this new development. Mr. Vance took the envelope, his practiced smile faltering. He looked at the man, then at the envelope. Tasha's smile froze on her face, a brittle, painted thing. She looked from the process server to Mr. Vance, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. Mr. Vance opened the envelope. He pulled out the documents inside. As he read, the color drained from his face. The jovial master of ceremonies was gone, replaced by a man staring at a corporate crisis unfolding on live television. He looked up from the papers, his eyes finding Tasha's. The silence in the ballroom was suddenly deafening. The reporters were leaning forward, their microphones raised. "What is it? What's wrong?" Tasha whispered, her voice a panicked hiss, just loud enough for the podium microphone to pick up. Mr. Vance cleared his throat. He looked out at the sea of confused faces and flashing cameras. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice strained, "there appears to be a complication with the verification process. We have just received a notarized legal filing from a Mr. Darnell Jenkins, who is asserting a co-ownership claim on this prize." A collective gasp went through the room. Tasha's face went from confusion to sheer, unadulterated horror. Her eyes darted around the room as if looking for an escape. She looked at Mireille, whose own smug expression had collapsed into a mask of disbelief. "The filing," Mr. Vance continued, his voice regaining some of its official gravity as he read directly from the document, "alleges that Mr. Jenkins was the sole purchaser of the ticket and includes a request for a forensic analysis of the physical ticket for fingerprint evidence. In light of this competing claim, the Florida Lottery is legally obligated to freeze any and all payouts pending a full and thorough investigation. This ceremony is postponed indefinitely." He set the giant check down, leaning it against the podium, as if it were now radioactive. The word postponed might as well have been canceled. The reporters erupted into a frenzy of shouted questions. Tasha stood there, paralyzed, her dream turning into a public nightmare in real time. Her perfect white dress now looked like a costume for a tragedy. The warehouse boy she had dismissed and discarded had just brought her entire world to a screeching, humiliating halt. In the quiet conference room, Darnell felt no joy, no triumph, just the cold, grim satisfaction of a plan perfectly executed. The aftermath was a cascade of consequences, each one falling faster than the last. The story was the lead on every local news station that night. The headline on the Florida Times-Union website read, "Lottery Celebration Grinds to a Halt Amid Fraud Allegations from Winner's Husband." The article included a picture of Tasha's horrified face, a still frame from the broadcast that was both pathetic and devastating. The Lottery Commission's legal department moved swiftly. Within 48 hours, they had obtained the security footage from the gas station. Ms. Sharma received a copy. She and Darnell watched it together in her office. The footage was grainy but clear. There was Darnell at 7:17 p.m. in his work uniform, sliding a $20 bill across the counter. There was the cashier handing him the ticket. There was Tasha, nowhere in sight. The camera had recorded the truth. The commission then performed a forensic analysis on the ticket itself. They found 2 sets of prints, a partial set belonging to Tasha, and one perfect, clear thumbprint on the back of the ticket. It matched the prints the lottery took from Darnell. The evidence was irrefutable. It was his ticket. The consequences for Tasha and Mireille were swift and brutal. The first to go were the toys. The $95,000 white Mercedes G-Wagon, which they had only leased, was repossessed from the parking lot of Mireille's apartment complex. The leasing company had seen the news and invoked a clause in the contract regarding financial misrepresentation. The $1,800 a month payment they had been so proud of was now a debt they couldn't pay. All the credit cards Tasha had opened in anticipation of her windfall were frozen. Her shopping sprees came to an abrupt end. The mountain of designer clothes and handbags, worth over $30,000, now sat in her apartment, their price tags a mocking reminder of a life she had touched but could not keep. The deposits she had put down on the Ponte Vedra condo were lost. The social fallout was just as severe. Family members who had been celebrating her good fortune now saw her for what she was. Her mother called, weeping with shame. Her cousins stopped answering her calls. She and Mireille became pariahs, the subjects of whispered gossip and judgment. They were no longer the family's success story. They were a cautionary tale. Tasha's voicemails to Darnell told the story of her complete unraveling. They started with anger. Voicemail 1. Darnell, what did you do? You ruined everything. You are a selfish, bitter man, and you will regret this. Then came denial and justification. Voicemail 2. This is all a misunderstanding. I was going to give you some of the money. You didn't have to do this, to humiliate me in front of the whole world. I was doing this for Zuri. This was followed by pleading. Voicemail 3. Please, Darnell, call me. We can fix this. Just tell them you made a mistake. I'll give you half. I swear, I'll give you half. Please. Then came horror, as she realized the legal jeopardy she was in. Voicemail 4. They're talking about fraud charges. Darnell, they could press charges. I could go to jail. You can't let this happen. Think about Zuri. Finally, there was just broken sobbing. Voicemail 5. Sound of weeping. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I lost everything. Darnell listened to each message once, his expression unchanged, and then deleted it. He forwarded them to Ms. Sharma, who added them to the growing file. The Lottery Commission, faced with overwhelming evidence of fraud, made its ruling. The prize was to be awarded in its entirety to the legal purchaser of the ticket, Mr. Darnell Jenkins. Tasha, because Darnell declined to press criminal charges, was spared jail time, but she was left with nothing but debt and public shame. The jackpot was his. The warehouse boy had won. 6 months later, the Florida sun shone brightly on the grounds of Northwood Elementary School. It was a Saturday, and the air was filled with the sounds of children's laughter and the smell of freshly laid mulch. Darnell stood near a newly constructed covered pavilion, watching as Zuri and her friends explored the winding stone pathways of a brand new garden. It was filled with vibrant flowers, shaded benches, and shelves of weatherproof children's books. A beautiful, hand-carved wooden sign near the entrance read, Zuri's Reading Garden, donated by Darnell Jenkins. Darnell had kept his job at the warehouse. The steady rhythm of the work, the camaraderie with his co-workers, it grounded him. He hadn't bought a new car or a mansion. He had bought a modest 3-bedroom house for $280,000 in a quiet neighborhood with good schools, not far from his old apartment. He had set up a trust fund for Zuri's education that would ensure she could be anything she wanted to be. And with a significant portion of the money, he had worked with the school to build this garden, a place of peace and imagination for the entire community. This, he realized, was true wealth. Zuri ran up to him, her face bright with excitement, her braids bouncing. She was holding a piece of paper. "Daddy, look what I drew." He took the drawing. It was a picture of the two of them sitting on a bench in the new garden, reading a book together. As always, she had used a brown crayon for their skin. This time, however, she had drawn a huge, smiling sun above their heads. He recognized himself in the simple drawing, the kind eyes, the strong shoulders. This was the man he had fought to be. "It's beautiful, superstar," he said, his voice thick with emotion. He felt a presence beside him. He turned. It was Tasha. He hadn't seen her in months. She looked smaller. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by simple jeans and a t-shirt. The arrogant confidence was gone, replaced by a deep, weary sadness in her eyes. Mireille was nowhere in sight. He'd heard she had moved to Georgia. "It's beautiful, Darnell," she said, her voice quiet, looking at the garden. "What you did here?" He nodded, not knowing what to say. "I'm sorry," she whispered, the words sounding rusty, unused. "For everything. I was lost. I thought the money was the answer. I thought it would make me happy." Darnell looked from her to his daughter, who was now happily showing her drawing to her teacher. He felt a surprising lack of anger. All the bitterness had been washed away, replaced by a quiet peace. He had gotten his justice, but he had no interest in her continued suffering. For his own sake, he needed to let go of the hate. "I forgive you, Tasha," he said, and he meant it. "For my peace, not for yours. I hope you find what you're looking for." She gave him a watery, grateful smile and walked away, disappearing into the crowd of parents. He knew their story was over. A new one, his and Zuri's, was just beginning. As he watched his daughter, a simple truth settled over him. Money doesn't build a life. Character does. Money can buy a house, but it can't buy a home. It can buy luxury, but it can't buy respect. True wealth isn't about what you have in the bank. It's about what you build in the world, the love you give, and the man your child sees when she draws a picture of her father. Some people spend their whole lives chasing a jackpot, never realizing the real prize is the love and dignity they throw away in the pursuit. He had almost lost it all, but in the end, he had won more than just the lottery. What do you think is the true measure of a person's wealth? Is it their bank account or the impact they have on their community? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We believe stories like Darnell's can change the world, one comment, one share at a time. Thank you for being part of our community.
Welcome to the Story Channel. Before we begin, I'd like to share a few notes. The content in this video uses AI-generated images and voice narration, combined with the channel's creative editing. Everything is intended solely for entertainment purposes and does not depict or reflect any real events or real people. Hope you enjoy the story and have a great time watching.